Back here on HQ Spotlight, I don't think a lot of folks had the Carolina Panthers making a playoff appearance on their football bingo card this year, but hey, we saw it. The Panthers were able to keep things competitive and close with the MVP Matt Stafford and the Rams in the wild card round of the playoffs. Still some Bryce Young doubters out there, but I mean, the Panthers had a nice addition in Ted McMillan, and under Bryce Young, they were able to have a lot of game-winning drives, and they're like the cardiac cats, if you will, of the NFL. Getting a look at the 2026 NFL Draft, the first-round picks in terms of the NFC South teams, the Panthers picking at 19, the Bucs at 15, the Saints picking at 8. Now, the Falcons, remember, they do not have a first-round pick. They traded that to the Rams, which everybody is kind of surmising. Maybe they'll get like a sneaky quarterback, who knows, to then take over for Matt Stafford. But regardless, the Falcons are not picking in the first round of the draft. So what each team needs to address, NFC South edition. We have JP and Mike back with us here. Starting with the Panthers, the NFC South champs. They added the now Offensive Rookie of the Year, Ted McMillan, a season prior. So what does Carolina need to address in free agency, JP, if they want to build on what we saw, especially towards the latter half of the season where things kept looking like they were getting one step closer to really being on the rise?
They got to start with their pass rush and their defensive line. They were last in the NFL in pressure rate. They're near the bottom in sack rate. And the issue with addressing the pass rush is they drafted 2 young edge rushers early in last year's draft with Princely Mamiel and Nick Scorton. And you're hoping those guys get better so you can address a little bit on the interior. And that's where I think a guy like John Franklin Myers will really be a great addition for this Panthers defense. He doesn't occupy a lot of attention, but he plays hard. He can wear multiple hats on the defensive line, but he can provide pressure from the interior. And he plays with an energy and a force that I think would really help take some attention off of Derek Brown. I think it would help some of the edge rushers really start to grow. And I think you just need to continue to add bodies to that defensive line rotation, to that defensive line group, because just as we saw with Seattle, if you have a rotation and a deep group of defensive linemen, that can take you to the Super Bowl.
I think linebacker is where I'm looking for the draft specifically, because as JP touched on, they drafted 2 edges in the top 100 last year. I don't think it makes sense to go back to that well, even if it still looks like a need. So linebackers where I'm looking, and a guy by the name of Josiah Trotter, son of Jeremiah Trotter, former All-Pro linebacker, is who I'd be looking at if I'm the Panthers, because what they missed at the second level was instinctual play. And what you see when you watch Josiah Trotter's tape for pretty much the first snap to the last snap is that this guy knows ball. It's kind of been a trend for these sons of former players that they just play at a different speed than everyone else, and that was obvious on his tape at Mizzou. The only reason he may fall to pick 51, which is where I would target him, is because of frame. You see there, he's a little bit smallish for an off-ball linebacker. It could be like a Nakobe Dean situation where the tape was great, but he fell to day 2, and then the Eagles profited. I think this is the guy in this year's class that fits that bill.
Okay, so as we make our way down the division, I want to get to the Bucs, because prior to this past season, this is the team that has dominated the division year after year. The injury bug certainly not kind to them over the past, 2 seasons. So, Mike, when it comes to the draft, and we know they've had luck there plenty of times, what do they need to attack here for Tampa Bay?
I'm looking at linebacker once again, and it's because Levante David could be on his way out. Servassier Dennis was kind of a liability in coverage last year. And if you look at this defense, it's so important for Todd Bowles' defense to have linebackers that are capable blitzers. So a guy by the name of C.J. Allen out of Georgia is the one I'm looking at, because he is the best downhill linebacker in this draft class. He plays with a violence that you cannot coach. He is rocked up. He is pure muscle. And when he hits an offensive lineman, they usually go backwards. That's the kind of guy you need for this Bucs defense, to be that enforcer at the second level, the transition plan from Levante David. So it was such a big issue for this defense last year that they have to address it. I don't think pick 15 is too early to address linebacker here.
And I'm going to double dip at linebacker here with free agency for the Bucs, because they just need it that much, especially if Levante David decides to hang him up, which if he doesn't, he can be a Buccaneer until he decides to retire. But Servassier Dennis was not a player they thought they would be in this season, especially in coverage. But they, like Mike said, you also need guys that are capable of blitzing. You need guys that are capable of doing multiple things on that defense. So how about we just double dip with Georgia linebackers and go with Nakobe Dean? I think that's one of my favorite player to a team free agency fits this season. Dean has a lot of capability in coverage. He's grown in that area since entering the NFL, but he plays with a violence. He plays with an urgency that I think Todd Bowles would really love. And I think if Lavonte David does end up hanging them up this season, Nakobe Dean is more than great and good enough to be the successor to Lavonte David in that defense.
Guys, if Lavonte David retires, there needs to be plans immediately to get a statue outside of Raymond James for him ASAP. Let's go to the Falcons. They do not have a first-round pick. A reminder, that is going to the Rams. And I'm still just as confused about the quarterback situation as I was the day that they drafted Michael Penix Jr., which brings us to free agent need number one, JP, which is quarterback.
It is quarterback, and it's going to be quarterback until we find out how healthy Michael Penix Jr. is, especially coming off that torn ACL, which is going to be scary in itself because that is another scary lower leg injury for Michael Penix Jr. We had multiple of those in college, but you're just thinking you need a guy that can get you at least to a baseline level with knowledge of Kevin Stefanski's offense and can just hold water until Michael Penix Jr. gets back. So why not go bring Joe Flacco to Atlanta? Let's see what he can do with Kevin Stefanski once again. I do think with the innate knowledge of Stefanski's offense, he's familiar with Tommy Rees, the offensive coordinator there. And I think when it comes to stable, not necessarily stable, but quarterbacks who don't really move in the pocket, I think Joe Flacco could be a really interesting guy for Penix to sit behind until he is ready to come back from that injury. Because I think Penix, when he gets back, is going to be the starter. You just need somebody who can at least get you to a point where you're ready to bring him back without having to rush him.
Yeah, I definitely don't see quarterback being a draft need for them. I don't think they're going back to that well, especially since pick 13 is not theirs anymore. And the reason it's not theirs is because they traded it for James Pierce last year. The problem is also James Pierce probably isn't playing another game for the Atlanta Falcons after the allegations against him last week. So that's why I think edge, the position James Pierce played, is their biggest need going forward, because that pass rush role that he filled, that he had double-digit sacks in, well, it's open now. So I'm going to pick 48, and I'm looking at R. Mason Thomas, the Oklahoma edge, who can fall to that range despite being one of the best pass rushers in this class, because when you look at him there, guy's only 6 feet tall. He is the smallest edge rusher, or at least the shortest edge rusher in this draft class. He is a edge rush sort of DPR, which is a designated pass rusher, which means he ain't playing on rundowns, which means he could fall to this point in the draft, and that's really all the Falcons need. They have some run defenders there off the edge. They got the early down guys. They just need the guy who has the juice, and when you watch R. Mason's tape, he definitely has the juice.
Okay, finally getting to the Saints, who are picking at number 8. And Renner, you had them addressing wide receiver in the draft.
Yeah, after they traded away Rashid Shaheed, it was just Chris Olave. And Chris Olave is great, but not a lot of teams can survive with just one wide receiver there on the outside. So that pick 8, I know a lot of people want Jeremiah Love to go there. I'd rather address it at wide receiver. I think that's where the bigger dividends could pay off in this offense with Tyler Shuck. And so I'm looking at Jordan Tyson, a guy from Arizona State who, when I watch him on tape, he gets open at a better clip than anyone else in this draft class. 711 yards in 9 games last year, but he keeps getting hurt. ACL tear in 2022 caused him to miss 2023 as well. Collarbone injury in 2024, hamstring injury in 2025. So a guy who has the best tape in this class could actually fall to 8. And if you're the Saints, I would take that risk because of what the upside, what the payoff could be if this guy can just stay healthy, and what it could do for Tyler Shuck in his career.
I'm also going to double down on receiver here for the Saints because, like Mike said, with Rashid Shaheed gone, it was Chris Olave and a bunch of people that you probably do not recognize unless you are a Saints fan. So I'm going to go with Romeo Doubs, receiver from the Green Bay Packers here. When it comes to creating separation and getting instant separation against man coverage, I do think Doubs is incredibly reliable. He's young. And now that you know that you have a guy in Tyler Shuck that you want to build around, at least for next year, you want to try and go out and get receivers that can create separation for him, that can make his job a little bit easier. That's what it means to build a QB-proof offense. Go get guys that make your quarterback's life easier for him. So I think if you're able to go get Doubs, add him with Chris Olave, who really showed that capability of being your explosive vertical receiver last season, I think you're creating a lot of layers in that Saints offense, which is something that Kellen Moore, I know he'll love.
Mike, JP, we certainly appreciate it. Going through what every team in the NFC South needs to address as we were heading into the offseason. Taking a quick look at the NFC South teams and their odds to win the NFC. It's
never good in the NFC South.
It's tough. It's 22-1 for the Bucs, and that's the best you got. 75-1 for the Panthers, the team that won the NFC South last year, but a long shot to win the NFC.